In 25 years, I've never met with one person who had their beneficiary structured properly. You heard me right. 100% of the time, I find beneficiary mistakes, and they often cost either the person or their family tens of thousands of dollars. That means you have mistakes hiding in your own beneficiaries right now. And I can't go over every problem that we see, so we're going to tackle 5 common mistakes. But before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, just click the thumbs up button, give us a like, make sure you share this video with your friends, and let's get into it.
He watches the markets.
In the great city of Memphis, Tennessee.
If they raise rates tomorrow, it could be a sign of confidence.
The financial advisor extraordinaire.
He's with McAdams Group.
Of course, Wall Street doesn't like rising interest rates.
And I know people from all over the Memphis area come to visit you for help with their RMD.
David McAdams is with us.
David McAdams.
David McAdams.
There are exceptions to the rule.
That's very interesting, because that's kind of against conventional wisdom.
That's the insanity of it. All right, so in just a minute, we're going to get to the #1 beneficiary mistake that could cost you and your family tens of thousands of dollars. But let's start with mistake number 1. Naming your estate as the beneficiary. You know, so many people, when they're setting up an account, it could be an IRA, a life insurance policy, some kind of benefit through your employer, and you're not really sure in that moment who you should name as your beneficiary. So you just quickly say, you know what, I'm not sure. Let's just put down my estate. Or even worse, you're advised by someone to put the estate as the beneficiary. Why is this a huge problem? You know, think about it. There's 3 categories that by definition, if you just have your beneficiary structured properly, they go outside of the will, outside of an expensive, unnecessary court process, and directly to your loved ones without any unnecessary court cost or attorney fees. What are those 3? Life insurance, annuities, and qualified retirement plans. Things like IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans, and on and on and on. But you want to avoid naming the estate as your beneficiary, because by doing that, what you're doing is you're taking an asset that goes outside of the expensive court process and you're throwing it right back into the will. You're throwing it right back into that probate process. And the attorneys love it when you have probatable assets in your estate, because that's where they make all their big money, waiting for people to die so they can probate the estate. In our practice, we don't want any assets to ever go through probate. But that's the common mistake, is naming your estate as a beneficiary. Don't do it. So the second most common mistake we see is not naming a successor beneficiary. You know, I've had hundreds of clients come in my office over the last 25 years. And when we're in that first appointment, I'm looking and I'm hunting and I'm searching for problems, red flags that apply to their affairs. And oftentimes we'll actually call the life insurance company, we'll call the annuity company, we'll call the IRA company, and we'll say, hey, who do they have listed as the primary beneficiary? Great. The spouse, fantastic. Who do they have listed as the contingent or successor beneficiary? Nobody. Really? That's a huge problem. Why? Because as I just mentioned a minute ago, there are assets that by definition, if you just have the beneficiary structure properly, don't go through the will, don't go through the estate planning or probate process. They go directly to your loved ones with no court costs, no attorney fees. And if you fill out the claim form properly, you could probably get all the money in 5 to 7 business days. But guess what? If there's no successor beneficiary, and that primary beneficiary either predeceases you or you die in a mutual car accident, guess what happens? It throws the asset right back into the estate, right back into probate court. And the estate planning attorney is your best friend and your family's best friend, because they get to probate the estate. They get to charge tens of thousands of dollars of unnecessary fees. So you want to make sure that every asset has a primary beneficiary and a successor beneficiary, and it should never be the estate. All right, what's the third thing? The third beneficiary mistake, I see it all the time. Try to avoid this where possible. You know, I understand land, real estate, a house, a farm. Sometimes there can be a lot of emotions when it comes to real estate and property. But where possible, really try to avoid leaving jointly titled real estate to multiple children. We see more problems with that happen. We see families disintegrate. We see them fall apart. Think about what you're accomplishing. A good friend of mine, his mother passed away, left some acreage to him and another sibling. Well, here was the problem. They were both married, but he had several children. He was not emotionally attached to the land. And frankly, he could use the money. He wanted to sell it. His sister actually lived on a house adjacent to the property, did not have children, was not really worried about getting the money, and was emotionally attached to the land. So here you had two people that had joint ownership in the land with completely opposite financial planning goals once they inherited the land. Now, long story short, because the sister didn't want to sell the land and the brother did want to sell it, he only had one recourse. If he really wanted to get this done, he could sue his sister. That's right. He could take her to court. He could go through an expensive, lengthy court process only to accomplish what? Having a judge divide the land somehow. Now, who gets the acreage with the road frontage? Who gets the back acreage? Good luck. They're going to fight over it. Attorneys love this. Attorneys love it when the family is fighting over assets in the estate. Why? Sometimes this lasts 2 to 3 years. It drags out the estate. It stays in probate court. Where possible, try to avoid leaving jointly titled property to multiple children. Now, there are solutions for keeping the family farm or keeping that house in the family and avoiding the property. We don't have time to go into all those solutions today, but stay tuned. We're going to have a complimentary offer. We can help you fix it. The next item on our list, number 4, not rolling your 401k into an IRA. This is a big problem. Did you know that many 401k custodial documents, if you look at the plan document, it will actually force a lump sum distribution to something called a non-spousal beneficiary. Think about it. Most people have their 401k, the primary beneficiary is who? Well, if you're married and you want to stay married, by the way, it's probably your spouse, right? But who's that contingent beneficiary? It might be the kids, it might be a nephew, a niece, could even be a church or charity, but it's not your spouse. So it could be a non-spousal beneficiary. Let's take a common example. Married couple with 3 kids. Primary beneficiary is the spouse. The successor or contingent beneficiary are the 3 kids, maybe a third. But guess what happens? If you die simultaneously in a car accident with your spouse, or maybe your spouse predeceases you, did you know that most 401k plans will force a lump sum distribution to that non-spousal beneficiary, your kids? Now imagine this. Let's say the kids are doing okay. Maybe they're married, they're both working. Maybe they're already in a 25% tax bracket. But now they inherit your 401k and it forces that lump sum distribution. So now they're in a 25% tax bracket, but all that money comes in on top of that. So you know what happens? We see that get taxed in the highest tax bracket. God forbid you live in a state with state income taxes. So it's easy to fix. You just want to roll your 401k into an IRA, but you don't want to roll it in the wrong kind of IRA, because if you get that wrong, that's an even bigger problem. We'll save the solutions for that to another video. Let me get to the number one thing, the number one biggest beneficiary mistake that many of you are making. And that is leaving your money to your children in their name. Okay? How many times have you known someone, or you heard a friend or a family member, maybe someone at church or a neighbor, maybe a coworker, and someone inherited some money, but maybe 3 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, that child that inherited that money unfortunately went through a divorce. You know, their spouse just came in one day and said, hey, it's over. Or maybe they had a car accident and they're getting sued for $2 million. Maybe they have problems with health bills or the IRS is coming after them. Do you know if you leave the money to your children in their name and then they go through a divorce or someone's coming after them and their money, guess whose money they can get to? All the inheritance money. So, you know, at McAdams Group, we believe that estate planning should be simple, inexpensive, and easy to implement. We help our clients avoid all these mistakes and protect the children from unforeseen divorces, unforeseen events. To get your complimentary consultation with an estate planning specialist, just click the link below and fill out a simple 60-second questionnaire.